Hi, welcome back to the Toilet Paper Diaries. Today we're looking at the before and after of a post-pandemic world. How to make yourself emotionally intelligent so you can do business, you can relate to people and stay sane after lockdown. You're watching the Toilet Paper Diaries.
Hey, Dave. We are right now starting episode 92, and I think this is going to be a very interesting episode because 1 year in lockdown, sounds easy, but in reality, we have gone through a lot of hardship and difficulties. And yes, we have had some good times. We have gotten fatter.
Much fatter.
But anyway, I think emotional intelligence is something that we have to really work on, and we have been working on, because from patience to desperation to sadness to sorrow to happiness, there's so many emotions that it's actually very difficult to handle them. So I think this is going to be an interesting episode.
What I want to say just at the head of this session is we've both called each other out on this list. And we've both said, you don't do that and you don't do that. And what happens is, if you're on your own with your family in lockdown, then it's like a pressure cooker. Everything you see is a mirror of you. It's not like you're going out and bumping into people and being able to cross-reference and make changes. It's you versus you most of the time. And in your own silo, your family have their own things and their own dynamics going on. So it's very easy to miss these points. So with that, what we're going to be sharing with you, you may go, I am, but you're probably not. If you have to think about it, you're probably not. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's correct. Hey, by the way, yesterday, The Simpsons turned 700 episodes.
700. And the thing to remember, Ernesto, is that 700 weekly episodes. It's not 700 days, it's weekly episodes. So if you work that out, that's 20 years?
Something like that. It's insane, huh?
It's probably longer because it'd have natural breaks when the season finishes.
Yeah.
So that's really scary. And the cartoons look as bad as they did when it first started. But I've got to say, the Simpsons kept me sane many, many times. And that ability to turn around and say, you know what, the world's a mess and my family is, but I'm not the only one. Even if we're yellow, doesn't matter. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but you know what is very interesting is that they have predicted so many things. You remember they predicted the presidency of Donald Trump. They predicted 9/11. They predicted so many things. I think the writers are real geniuses. But I think it also happens because, of course, they are observing what's going on in society, and I think this is something that you can also predict if you use a little bit of your emotional intelligence to figure out what is going on.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things about emotional intelligence is the consequential thinking, about wondering what happens if you do this, what will be the next thing that happens, and what will that lead to, and how will you deal with it. And so strong emotionally intelligent people are always thinking about what's coming up next, rather than just going now and me. But we're not going to get into politics. We're going to spend this time sharing our insights about what you need to be able to do to be effective.
So we put together a list of 12 different things which are incredibly important right now after the lockdown. And as you were saying, we were basically calling ourselves into those things. And yeah, it's true. Neither you nor me are perfect, nor you are going to be perfect either. It is a process. It is something that you need to work on. But I think before you start working on it, you need to be aware of what is exactly what you need to do. And I think that for us, it was touching. Yesterday, we were having this calling session between the two of us.
We were like two old wives fighting with each other, an old couple.
Yeah, but it was very good. It makes us feel it makes us feel much better, and we hope that also this episode is going to also do the same thing for you. So, Dave, why don't you get started with the first thing that we thought that it was very, very important now after the pandemic on emotional intelligence?
Right, I'm going to start off with number one. Emotionally intelligent people think about their feelings amongst everything else that goes on. Now, this is a real change and a break, especially for men, because men traditionally didn't think about feelings. We just got stuff done. We just took action and we went in and don't worry about all that stuff. I know you're upset about it, but it'll all come through in the end. And that single-minded thinking and that single-minded attitude is really dangerous. And not only is it so small-minded in the modern society, but you get called up on it by everybody if you don't think about the feelings that are involved in it. Now, some people turn around and say, oh, yeah, woke. It means that everybody's complaining, everyone's doing this. But it's not a case of that. It's a case that you now have to balance the fact that people are valuable. But in a social media related world, all it takes is for one person to feel bad about you and feel that they've been done wrong by you, and they can make a big issue for you on social media. Now, I'm not saying you need to think about everybody in the same way, but they wouldn't be doing it unless there's a point to it. If you are aware of emotions and feelings as you move forward, but you still allow yourself to move forward, then you become much more effective because you can pre-think about what's going to happen, as well as when you leave a situation, if you leave it in a bad state, you can go back and fix it before you move on. So it's a very powerful trick to have.
Yeah, absolutely. It is incredibly important to use, to learn to use, to understand your feelings. That's very good. Point number two is they pause. And I have to say that this is one of the ones that has been very, very hard for me, because I am, as a good Latino, I am very explosive in many situations. And in many cases, you really have to take a step back, whatever is going on, take a step back before you start doing something stupid, before you start moving around and then, damaging a relationship or putting a post in social media that you know that is going to be hurtful to you or to others, or to start criticizing something. You have to think back and said, well, what are going to be the repercussions of me doing something or saying something or not doing something? And this is hard. I mean, we have been now in captivity for such a long time that now, our only valve of expression has been social media. And sometimes, I have seen throughout this pandemic, a lot of people that I had a lot of respect for, completely taken that respect out of the just blown it out, because of course
over the elections mainly.
Well, over the elections, exactly. That was just, how many insults did we get? And we were not really, even though we were not 100% partial when we were talking about that, but people suddenly get really personal whenever you didn't agree with what you had to say. So that is one of those things that you really have to work on. You really have to pause and think, what are going to be the consequences of me doing or not doing something? I think that's an important one.
Amazing. Number three, I'd say that emotionally intelligent people control their thinking. So you can't stop things happening to you. You can't stop these impacts on your blood being raised to boiling points and you start to get these smoke coming out of your ears, but you can control what happens next. And so sometimes, and I studied emotional intelligence with the 6 Seconds organization, and they say that within 6 seconds, you can calm down in any situation and then be able to make a rational decision based on what's in front of you. If you don't count those 6 seconds, then you'll act on your lizard brain. You'll act on just survival mode. And sometimes you can do damage to the people that you love most because you strike back because you feel so badly wronged. So your ability to take that step to one side to think about, how am I going to react to this? And is it the best way to be able to do it for me and for everybody else? Is so key. Because one thing I've got to say, for those of you who are just watching and saying, what emotional intelligence, I don't really get it. Let me just explain exactly what emotional intelligence is. It's about 3 things. It's about what happens that you feel emotionally inside you. It's about understanding emotionally what happens to the people in front of you. And it's about choosing the best way to say and share what you need with them in a way that they'll receive it, so they'll get to do what you want them to do. That's best for everybody. So there's 3 elements to it. So it's not just about you being emotionally intelligent, but I hate everybody. You have to have empathy for the rest of the world for this to be effective.
Yeah. How long ago was it that David Goleman wrote the book Emotional Intelligence? What was it, about 15, 20 years ago?
Daniel Goleman. Yeah, it was what? It must have been. I think about when I went to the course. It must have been about 20 years ago. And I
20
remember
years.
him being one of the speakers, and it was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
That when they broke it down. I'll just say this one thing. They broke it down to leaders and their gut reactions, and 93% of top decision makers make decisions with their gut, not with the facts and figures in front of them. It might look like this on paper, but it doesn't feel right. I'm going to go with my feelings, and that's emotional intelligence. So it's used everywhere, even though we maybe didn't realize we're using it.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I was asking is just think about how we grew up, and this is the reason why a lot of people are really messed up with their emotions. I mean, if you remember the Wall from Pink Floyd, I mean, when they are that specific scene when the kids are actually becoming robots, and then you see the very old-fashioned teachers hitting them in the hand with their ruler and spanking them and that kind of thing. That really actually makes you shut down. And so many people do not know how to master their emotions. I mean. And this actually takes me into point number 4. Hardly anybody learns of their emotional hijacks. And this is, I think, super important right now. I mean, look at what happened throughout the pandemic. All those Karens and those Kevins that were exploding everywhere in, which strangely enough, they always have the same hairstyle. But I don't think that it has anything to do with the whole thing. But anyway, they were exploding and they were doing all sorts of things. They were emotionally hijacked. Previously, in the past, I would just say, well, these assholes, I don't like them. I think they're terrible, whatever. Right now, what I am doing is I am trying to think a little bit more on, well, these guys must be going on through something very, very hard. I recently had this conversation with these clients, which also got emotionally hijacked, and it's incredible how they completely lose it, and they have no clue how to control their entire world around them. In the past, I used to completely dismiss them and say, well, that's an idiot, and I don't want to deal with them. Right now, I take a step back and I said, something's happening to them. Let me try to figure it out. And then I started asking questions. And I tell you, that for me has been a catharsis. It has been very helpful for me to understand other people, but also to understand myself so that I don't react that way.
Ultimately, everybody's doing the best that they can with what they have. So when you disagree with somebody making a ridiculous decision on what they do and how they do it, you have to realize that in their world, they're doing what they believe is the right thing. And it might be a direct conflict with you, and the interest might be a direct conflict with your interests. But it doesn't mean it's any less than yours. But on the same point, you don't need to go around giving away all your wealth or your stuff to everybody. You still have to be able to look after yourself, but it's better if you get an understanding about what's going on. If you look at the greatest generals in history, whether you're talking about Napoleon or you're talking about anybody else, Alexander the Great, they all understood what their opponents were going to be doing next because they had empathy. And so that's really key to being successful. And that's why it's such a big thing to have emotional intelligence in the business world. For everybody to have a successful business, they have to know what's going on with their teams, with the landscape they're in, and also with the competitors and clients at the same time. The next thing I choose is number 5, and this is they demonstrate humility. Effectively, emotionally intelligent people understand the power of realizing that everybody is the same, and realizing that if you go me, then you're actually not getting other people to see you as important. They're always thinking about themselves anyway. And this is a key thing. So you've always got to think about what's in it for somebody else. What's in it for somebody else is you understanding what they get out of this whole experience. So if you talk about, I want this, they're only thinking, if I give you this, what do I get out of it? So by having humility and bringing it right down to a level where it's just basically you sharing as best as you can for the common good, it really makes an impact, because then you can understand what's going on with them, and then you can get actually what you want, because ego and look at me is taken out of it. if we look at the big difference in the world right now and the pandemic and the way that it's hit politics, the world, not everybody, but the world seems to be recovering faster as a direct result of saying, okay, things are tough. Let's see where we can move on together to make things better. And that's a really powerful way of looking at what humility does for people. So being humble and taking a step back and not blowing your own trumpet makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, my next point, and I think it's an interesting one because, Dutch people have a different way of seeing things. I mean, and it is really interesting. The honesty has some sort of different connotations in different countries. Yep. Dutch people are brutally honest, and I love it. I absolutely love being brutally honest. I mean, in the Netherlands, you go there and they see you, you know what, you look like shit, and they will just tell you straight away, this is how you look. And to a certain extent, you also need to combine honesty and compassion, because of course you don't want to hurt people. But I think it's always good to be very honest. I mean, to be very honest about what's going on, and that people can see, well, this guy is as it is. Don't make it worse, better, bull crap that you're just using to people, and be authentic. This is something that throughout this pandemic has been very hard for a lot of people, because as you were saying a little bit earlier, many people are doing okay, many people are doing great, but the majority of the people are not doing as well as they possibly could have done, and they are hiding. They're hanging on, and they don't say it, and that actually affects their feelings and how they think. That affects their emotional intelligence. That really gets them into, well, why are these guys pretending? Right now, sure, things are not the way that we would like them to be, and I think it's just super important to practice honesty, to practice authenticity, and to honesty with compassion. And I have to say that.
That's what I wanted you to say. With compassion. You look like shit. Bye.
Yeah, but, well, the thing is, in Holland, that's how it is. I mean, they will be extremely, but it's something that I appreciate, because I don't like when people tell you one thing and they think another, and that is one of those Dutch traits that I got from them, and I absolutely love it.
Well, I absolutely don't love it. So what I would say is, I think you're right about the authenticity, but I think you need to package it in a way that benefits the person you're talking to. You don't have to pull back on necessarily the point you're making, but I think you should do it in a way where they can move forward. So, positive criticism, turning around to somebody and saying, I know that you're probably having a challenge with this and it's going to affect you, but why have you thought about doing it this way? This might be better. So and the way I'd say it, and it's the difference between but and. Yeah. When you're saying about something to somebody, you're saying, and you're terrible, the things you did were terrible, but blah, 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 blah. They just remember the things you did were terrible. But if you say the things you did were terrible and you can improve it, it suddenly takes them back up again. So it's the difference between but and. Let me just say, if we use subtitles, I said but and, not but on your hand. That's a different thing.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
So I agree with that. That's fantastic. I would also say that when it comes to emotionally intelligent people, number 7, they commend others and deliver necessary feedback effectively when needed. And I think that also ties in the point that we've just made. Tell people, compliment people when they've done well, let them know. It's not necessarily an effeminate way of relating to people. It's just an honest way that makes people feel good. You look great today is a great way of doing it. And also when you do deliver that feedback, sometimes it's essential in many ways. Now, villages from coaching and counseling, what you need to do is get them to understand what the solution is themselves. So when they do that, they own it. If you tell people all the time what they need to do, it's like your parents nagging you. But if you say, what's the best way to move forward? And you already know the answer, but you let the other person come up with it, then they will feel ownership of it. And it's been proven to work in the way that your brain is wired. So it's really effective when you do give that feedback, and you should give that feedback to let them feel that they can move forward as a result of it.
Yeah, right now, especially with kids, right now kids need positive reinforcement tremendously, because of course, they have been to bigger extent isolated. Now even they go to school, they are uncertain. And I see it with my kids. I mean, for my son Vincent, it hasn't really been that bad. But for my daughter Nina, she's in a bit of a younger stage. It has been a lot harder for her. And we have to really keep on giving her a positive reinforcement, because it's just really something that the pandemic has been a very, very hard thing for all of them. So,
but it's also for adults as well. I mean, kids, we understand, because at least we've got years and years of experience to be able to say the world does become better.
Number 8, I think for me, this one has been an incredible thing. I remember in 1993, I was in Santa Barbara, California. I was doing my speaker training with Jack Canfield, and he recommended a book that is called Cybernetics. No, what is it? Cybernetics or whatever it's called.
Good book.
Good book. Yeah, it was too old. A good time ago. It was called Cybernetics. I think it's called. And it was by 2000, and it was Cybernetics 2000. And on this book, I think I'll check it up in a second. But anyway, in this book, the author was basically explaining that you always say, well, you have to forgive and you have to forget and forgive and forget. Now, the interesting take from this guy was that you cannot do one without the other. I mean, if you don't forgive, you will not forget. So this is just absolutely critical. And the problem is, if you don't forgive, that starts rotting away in you. So forgiving and forgetting is just absolutely critical. Right now, doesn't matter. I mean, and this is an exercise that I did a long time ago. Think of people that have hurted you. Think of people that have done any something that has bothered you, or there's people that carry grudges for the rest of their lives. I mean, I know people very close to me that are carrying grudges constantly, and that is, of course, affecting their lives. And this is just something which is really very bad right now throughout the pandemic. I mean, how many times we have been in situations that we have made stupid decisions, stupid things, because of course we had no clue what was going to be happening. And one of the things that I've been practicing on a daily basis almost is, whenever I do something stupid, whenever I do, I always ask for, you know what, I'm sorry. I think those are the most powerful words that you can have. I'm sorry, I messed up. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. And whenever somebody has done anything to you, make sure to forgive and forget. And don't carry grudges, whatever it is. I mean, you can forgive and forget anything. It doesn't matter if it is infidelity. It doesn't matter if it is something hurt. I mean, just look at the example, for example, from the Pope when he went to the jail in Rome to forgive Muhammad Akka because of him shooting him. I mean, we see Gandhi. We see so many examples of how forgiving, it's incredible to let yourself grow as a human being. So that's something that I definitely recommend you to do.
Well, the book you're talking about is Cybernetics 2000
That's
by
the
Bobby
one.
Sommer.
Yeah.
So I just looked up while you're talking there.
It's not cyber, it's psycho.
Cybernetics 2000, all about how people think, which I will be checking out and I will be reading myself. I would agree with you on everything you said, but here's the thing. I think forgiving and forgetting are a challenge. Forgiving 100%. If you carry around that poison all the time, you're going to feel rotten whenever you look at anybody. It's going to bring back those emotions. But I think forgetting is a challenge because of the fact that if you've had somebody do something to you, I think it's daft to leave yourself wide open for that possibility for it to happen again. But I don't think you should carry around that hate the same way, because you have to forgive them, forgive yourself, and move forward. But sometimes forgetting is a bit more difficult. For many people, forgiving is very difficult. For those of us carrying around childhood issues by parents that let us down, or teachers or adults or somebody who did wrong by us, forgiving is a really difficult thing because your entire lifetime you've carried it. And in many cases, your personality has been grown out of the adversity you met earlier. To let somebody off the hook, means that your entire life could have been like a lie, which maybe it was. But the sooner you get back onto who you truly need to be, you don't necessarily have to forget, but forgiving means you're not drinking poison, expecting somebody else to appreciate what you're doing to them because they won't understand why you're taking it in the first place. Number 9, emotionally intelligent people keep their commitments and they realize that their word is their bond. This is more true now than ever before because social media and fake news and all the rest of it will hold you to things that you say in public, but also because what sells ultimately in any case, in any business, is not what you do for a living, but the certainty that you will deliver what you say you will do. When people know that when you say you'll do something, you will do it, they have a trust in you that is essential for things to become a relationship. So they have to know you, they have to like you, and they have to trust you. And part of that is that you are the real deal. When you say you're going to commit and you're going to do something, you do it completely. And I think that nowadays, we really look at things in people like that. We look at the fact that if you go to see a movie, and this is just not just nowadays, if you go and see a movie that's got your favorite actor in, the movie might be lousy, but you know that they will deliver the best that they can because that's what they do. They commit to doing it. But I think the same is true in relationships, it's true in businesses. And if you find that you've got somebody who doesn't commit or doesn't come through what they promised to, it does leave that little gap. In many cases, they don't know. So moving back to one of the points made earlier about the feedback and positive criticism to let them know, because they might not know. They might just see that as a way of moving through life without realizing why people don't ever come back to them because they don't know that commitment is a really important point.
Yeah, specifically on that point right now, I mean, all of these things that you're saying are 100%, I agree with them. But let's just dig a little bit deeper on that, because also what happens is that right now people don't really understand that it's even on the smaller things. I just got a telephone call from somebody that was very interested in working with me. Well, that was about a week ago. And I gave him 1.5 hours of my time without really trying to sell him into anything, just really giving him an advantage about taking advantage of every single thing that he was asking me. I give him as much as possible information and everything. And then he said, I will follow up with you in the next couple of days. So he indeed followed up with me in a couple of days. And then he said, let's make an appointment tomorrow at 3:30. He stood me up one time. He stood me up 2 times. He stood me up 3 times. Or as the kids say right now, he ghosted me 3 times. I mean, not because you're not there. I mean, that for me was an insult. And this is what you normally are seeing more and more often right now, because of course it's just so easy to say, okay, I'll see you there, or I'll be on the webinar, or I'm going to be doing that, or I'm going to be doing the other. If you say something, freaking do it. Right now, it's so important. Your word is your bond. So I fully agree with you. So
and also, you can't complain about being stuck in traffic on the thing and not getting there. You're at home. You got to go click on your Zoom or your Meet or your Teams and go live. That's your lot. So, yeah, you got to make it. Maybe you've got a bad calendar. You're not looked after your scheduling properly, but there's a very few excuses you can fall back on nowadays.
That's correct. So number 10 is going to be helping others and sharing good stories. So let's just split this one quickly in 2 parts. Helping others, and this is something that I've also started to realize. The more you help others, it just brings a lot of very good karma. And I am very pleased to actually, especially the people I love, those are people which I am connecting with them, trying to see where they are and how may I help them. I am investing 1 or 2 hours a week, which is possibly not much, but I think it's just what I can commit right now. I tell them, well, what can I do for you? And if it is necessary, I'll sit down with them, talk to them in the phone and help them. So helping other people that you love, it's very important, because of course people are they're going through this in a very different way. And now the other thing is share good stories. I mean, right now you turn on the news and it's just full of garbage. I mean, doesn't matter if you're watching CNN or if you're watching Fox or if you're watching whatever you're watching, it's just absolutely horrible. Yesterday, I sat down with my son, Vincent, to watch the film Moneyball. And for him, he's a very good in math. He's also a very emotional kid. And I thought it was a perfect film for me to explain to him that not everything is about winning, that everything is about, that you can use your left brain and you can use your right brain and still win, even if you don't become the super absolutely incredible millionaire or the biggest star in the world. And he's at that point that he really needed to hear that message. And I knew about that message. So if you know some good stories, share it with people, do videos, share great stories on the internet, share great stories on social media, help people with positive stories, because this time requires a lot of positive stories.
Absolutely, it's such a great point. But the reason he tells stories, and the reason why storytelling is such a strong, almost like a business martial art nowadays, is if you give facts to people, then they will either accept the facts or will understand the facts, but that's pretty much it. If you tell a story, it lights up different parts of the brain. So therefore, the whole brain becomes alert to the different emotions that go with this story. That's why when we're kids, we're told fairy stories and we remember them to this day. Somebody talks about, Jack and the Beanstalk or Snow White or any stories like that. You remember everything. Why? Because the story stuck in your head, because it had sad bits and good bits and all the rest of it. That's why Disney made their fortune out of telling stories. So ultimately, when you share stories with people, it really does have a huge impact. So that means that you also have a level of responsibility to tell good stories that have an ending. There's nothing worse than spending time with a long story of somebody and then they just stop telling it and say, what happened? Well, that was it. So what was the point of the story? Yeah, I should have thought about that 2 hours ago when I first started telling it. So tell good stories with a point. Otherwise, you end up falling out with everybody as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 11 is emotionally intelligent people can relax. They can take time for themselves and realize that sometimes you don't have to win every battle, which is exactly what you were saying there, sharing with your son. Such a key element, because high blood pressure, stress, all these things are killers. And so if you can take time to relax and be happy in your own skin and find small victories, sometimes when you can't find anything else that makes you feel good, but there's a couple of things that make you feel happy, then it's worth having. The other thing that they do with that is they safeguard themselves from emotional manipulation. Let me explain. There's a dark side to emotional intelligence. Once you understand people, you understand yourself, and you understand how to get the best out of people, you can also manipulate people and get them to do things that's not in their good. And that means you can mislead them. You can talk about yourself being really important, and you can do it as a cult leader, or you can do it to make people spend money on stuff they don't want to spend money. And that's very, very difficult to deal with if you buy into the person who's in front of you. And I won't mention anybody in particular, but there's a lot of ex-world leaders who later on you go, did that really happen? Just in politics, you might look at your old boss and say the same thing. So the key to it is to understand that there is a lot of emotional manipulation in the news, in advertising, in sales, in music, in everything, in games. The key is to learn how to manipulate your own emotions and recognize what other people are doing. So when you are hit with something and you go, wow, take a step back. What is that wow really? Did they catch you off guard? Did it have nice music around it? Did it make you feel a certain way because they're trying to push something past you that otherwise, if you're thinking clearly, you would have said, don't do it? As a hypnotist and a stage hypnotist for 20 years, I know I can get people up on stage, you see this, Ernesto, and get them to do incredibly crazy things and get them to speak Martian and get men to marry each other who are interested in marrying each other and get people to become ballet dancers and lap dancers, crazy stuff. But that's because I know how to emotionally make them buy into certain things. Now, one of the key things is I will never leave anybody in that state. I'll never get anybody to do anything that would embarrass them beyond what they were happy to do in normal life if it just felt like doing it. And also, I won't leave people in that state. I always bring them out of it. That's one of the important values to me. It's so easy to not feel like that. And I remember when I went to Vegas to train to be a stage hypnotist maybe 20 years ago, one of the best hypnotists in the world, a guy called Anthony Cools, said to me, beware of the God complex. I said, what's that? It's when you're doing stage shows and you can get people to do anything because you hypnotized them, you can start thinking it's you with special powers. It's not. You just know how to do certain things. Be humble and look after them because they're in your care. And he was 100% right. I wish more politicians knew that or thought about it the same way as well.
Yeah, that's correct. For number 12, and on this one, Dave, I think it's something that we have to both talk about a couple of experiences, because I think I think we will be able to provide a lot more value. So in this one is embracing diversity. Let me just tell you what that means for me. And I know that for you also, Dave, has a similar meaning, but also you have also different meanings on that. So for me, one of the things was, and this is a sign of emotional intelligence, and I think it's something that I recommend everybody to practice. Every time that you meet somebody that doesn't meet your regular criteria of what you like, what you are, what your values are, try to see how can I connect with this person? I mean, for example, if how would you be able to connect with a redneck, or how would you be able to connect with a black person, or how would you be able to connect with a Chinese person, or how would you be able to connect with somebody which is a liberal? And if you're a conservative, how you would be able to connect with a conservative if you're a liberal? I think the moment that we start adding labels to people, we stop flowing the communication. I mean, and this is a conversation that we were having yesterday. We were saying, well, we're trying to say that we are working on our emotional intelligence, but subconsciously and sometimes consciously between us, we have these kind of conversations. Well, look at that, and look at how they behave, and look at this and that and the other. And I said, yeah, but we have to be able to accept everyone. I mean, we are not in this on our own. We have to be able to accept everybody, and one way or the other, try to say, well, how can I get myself on their shoes? Is that how do you feel about this topic of accepting everybody's diversity? Because diversity is a very, very dear topic for you, Dave.
Yeah, I think that what you've got to do is you don't have to accept everybody's point of view, but you have to accept the right for them to have their own point of view, even if you don't agree with it. You don't have to adopt it and say, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, in my case, right-wing thinking doesn't work for me because I'm not included in the right-wing way of thinking. But what it does is, if you embrace diversity, it gives you a better understanding of the landscape and the roadmap and the terrain in front of you, because you'll see that there's other people who think different things. And it's very easy for us to be in our own silos, especially now. As far as I'm concerned, the whole world's feeling like me and my family. Well, the whole world's not feeling like that. I mean, never did. Yeah. The whole world's feeling their own version of what's going on. Yeah. I remember years and years ago, I used to watch a show called Buck Rogers of the 25th Century. Do you remember that?
I remember.
Bitty. Okay, Buck. That was whatever that thing was called. And they had one episode where a couple escaped from a planet where they felt imprisoned. And they were wearing colored masks with like bright colors all over them. There's a guy and a girl, and they escaped. And Buck Rogers and his team helped them escape because they were being fired upon by these enemy vessels. And they rescued him, took him away, and said, we're escaping because it's so oppressive. And then they took their masks off, and the guy was gorgeous, the girl was gorgeous, and they weren't allowed to wear their masks, and it was a terrible thing. And so then they went down to a planet to liberate everybody, and they said, everybody take your masks off. And they did. All the guys had identical faces, and the women had identical faces too. They were clones.
Yeah.
And so the masks and the oppression were actually meant there to get people to be individual. So always be careful about what it is that you're doing. People have to be different. And you should welcome a world where they are different, because you and I found this, and we took a political test recently and found we're almost peas in a pod, almost exactly the same way politically, but we're so different on many other things.
Yeah.
And that's when we're super close. We've been like brothers for 20 years, but we still see differently on so many other things. Yeah. So, I mean, if we can have that space, it's incredible how many other people out there might be closer to you than you think, but you're not giving them a chance to be, because you just pick up on one thing that you both disagree on.
Yeah, and I think this goes into very superficial things and also into very deep things. So, for example, one of the things that I always tell my kids is, we have to be able to test, to try any kind of food. I mean, whether it is Asian food, whether it is uh, African food, whatever it is, because even for those superficial things, anybody that just eats meats and potatoes, you can normally say by that specific thing, it's somebody which is not very open-minded. It's somebody which is not going to really think about diversity and seeing things in a different way. So, I mean, that is just one of the levels. I mean, anybody that says, well, I cannot listen to this kind of music, I don't really like this kind of thing, all they're doing is, I am just a freaking narrow-minded piece of crap. And this is something that we have to be very, very careful, because in this world, this world is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And these people are, it's not good. And it's actually affecting you not being open to more possibilities, especially right now that we're living in a very virtual world. This world is going to become a lot smaller, and you're going to have to be a lot more open-minded.
I agree completely. When we do finally come out of lockdown across the globe, what we're going to discover is that many people will have been in an incubator, and they will have changed everything that they thought about as to what's important and what's not important, or they'll have doubled down on the way that they were before and expected the whole world to be like that. We're not cross-pollinating. We're not spending quality time with diverse groups and chatting and so on. And so there are going to be a lot of challenges. We might even find a load of wars start up between countries or between political groups or whatever, just because we've been holding it all back and the frustration of everything comes out at the same time. But that's unfortunately part and parcel of what's going to happen when you do start being able to share who you are, what you think, and getting balance on what goes on. So the bottom line in everything that we're sharing here is the importance of being emotionally intelligent and understanding that you might not know where this is going. You might not really see what's going on. But when you start asking yourself questions, and certainly study the books by Daniel Goleman, but there's loads of courses and things you can do, especially online, super cheap, to learn about emotional intelligence. When you do this, you'll find that you get, first of all, more opportunities for business and connecting with people. You'll find that you receive a huge benefit from the connections that you get, because people will give you the benefit of the doubt because you're actually sharing stuff that relates to them in the way that you say stuff. You'll be a better leader. You'll also have people who will know that you've got a better spin of how things move forward. And most of all, and I think this is true for you and me as entertainers and as speakers, we've had emotional intelligence as a kind of like a martial art. You can walk into a room and feel the vibe. And you know that what you say to the audience will take them in a certain direction or in another direction. Sometimes they're too slow and they're too down. You've got to make them laugh to waken them up. And sometimes they're too boisterous, but not paying attention to what you say. So you've got to calm them down. I think those skills are essential, not just as a speaker, but as anybody who wants to get something that really happens in their relationship with people in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you guys think? I mean, we would love to get your comments. How is emotional intelligence impacting your life, or how has it impacted this past year that we have been in lockdown? We would love to hear your comments. And Dave, on that great note, we are finishing episode 92. We are still 600 and 8 episodes far away from the Simpsons, but we're progressing.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we can drink as much beer as Bart's dad, Homer, and still be around after 700 episodes in the future, but it would be a nice thought. But meanwhile, we are our own little talk show, our own little Simpsons group, and we are the Toilet Paper Diaries. So we'd love to know your thoughts. We'd love to know whether you need to know more emotionally. And I can say that I hope you forgive me for all my emotional idiocy in the last 20 years or so, Ernesto. And I certainly forgive you for 99.9% of yours.
Absolutely. Forgiven and forgotten.
Oh, wow.
And by the way, I have a prediction, as they do in The Simpsons. And the prediction is that we will be here exactly 1 week from today on a new episode of the Toilet Paper Diaries.
I'll hold you to that. See you next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.